And there we go. We're on the line with Jonathan Barsness. Finally, Jonathan, you're a busy man today. Brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Jonathan, I'm glad you're able to spend a few minutes with us to talk about this. Vaccine passports and what they might mean for us as this year progresses and we make our travel plans. First of all, good morning to you. And second of all, what is a vaccine passport?
Yeah, thank you, and good morning to you as well. The vaccine passport is an idea that's been gaining traction recently, and essentially it's pretty straightforward. People who can prove vaccination will be allowed to travel and engage in public spaces and go to restaurants, malls, public areas with proof of inoculation. But there are a few concerns, I think, that are worth highlighting at the outset, and one is, what do we do about people who abstain from getting vaccines? The early data and polling suggests that, maybe upwards of 25% or more U.S. citizens will decline getting vaccinated. And similarly, what about people with unique health and medical conditions or pregnant women? If they choose to not get vaccinated or cannot get vaccinated, would they be disallowed from traveling? And is that fair? And then the third thing is precedent. So we're dealing with COVID-19, but what happens in the next health crisis or the next health emergency? Are we going to want to sort of standardize a vaccine passport? And I think those are all open questions.
Yeah. What form would they come in? A card, some sort of bracelets you wear? What would they be like?
Yeah, there are a number of companies, domestic and international, that are working on developing, apps to download on your phone that would both verify testing results and vaccination proof. But the issue with applications, just like any app that you download, is how secure are they? Hackers will target, personal information, sensitive health data, COVID status, vaccination records, and perhaps credit card information. And so that's a potential problem. The second is counterfeiting. So if we mandate or incentivize people getting vaccinated and then issue vaccine passports, there's the likelihood that an illicit market will develop around counterfeit documentation, so people can purchase things that are fraudulent in order to be able to travel. And I think those concerns should be addressed if a vaccine passport is going to be a viable idea.
Yeah, we're getting the idea then that probably the federal or at least the state governments would need to get involved, and that there would be probably a tremendous expense in setting something up. Some sort of system would have to be established, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, and it would parallel, current challenges in terms of just standardizing processes across multiple states, and then even with the vaccine passport, thinking internationally. Some countries have opened up borders to people who can prove they've been vaccinated or recovered from COVID-19, and that process is by no means uniform. So whether or not an American citizen could travel easily to the EU or other parts of the world would require coordination on an international level that would be challenging, to say the least.
Yeah, we can certainly see something sort of like the DMV set up, and we know that sometimes that's not as smooth as can be state to state, and some states do it better than others might. And there's also the question with a COVID vaccine passport of denial of rights to someone should they not have it, and whether it is economically feasible for some people to get it. All of those things are issues that at the beginning of any new thing have to be worked out. This one just seems like it would be really complicated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when you talk about, even just getting vaccines, state and local governments are sort of determining the people who have priority, right? Understandably, health officials, teachers, first responders, these types of folks. But there are, and inevitably will be, people, segments of the population that won't have the same access to getting vaccinated or downloading an app easily and then presenting a vaccine passport. And the sort of ethical conversation behind that is certainly worth having.
It's kind of interesting to me, Jonathan, that a year ago we were talking about, here comes something that we really don't know anything about. It's called coronavirus, and they finally settled on a name for it. They didn't even have a name for it at first. And then the issues as they unfold as the year goes along, and this is just the latest of those. Your job as an intelligence analyst, you watch these things all the time. Did you see something like this coming up as a possibility that it might be a thorny issue?
Yeah, at the time I was working for a major tech company on the West Coast, and it was essentially all hands on deck when the coronavirus was identified, in China and in Asia. And what happened almost immediately was worrying about employee safety, shutting down travel, making sure that people had the support they needed. But then on the business side, on the intelligence side, tracking the virus, researching what health officials were saying. And, since the beginning, it's just been a complex issue that even for health professionals to communicate to the general public has been a challenge. And then for those of us that do intelligence work, all of the secondary impacts to business, to travel, to whether or not employees will be able to come back to the office and when will vaccinations be required. And what we've seen is that each city, state, and country level government is responding differently. So it's just in terms of processing the information, it's quite a big lift.
We're talking to Jonathan Barsness this morning, intelligence analyst, about vaccine passports. We've talked about how complicated it might be, what the difficulties might be. What would be the benefits?
Well, the benefit is that you allow travel to happen again, right? So people who, have been inoculated and can safely travel can engage in all of the activities that we miss, and then, sort of jumpstart the global economy again and help the industries that have been so hurt by the inability for us to interact publicly. So the upsides are big, and hopefully I haven't overemphasized all of the challenges, but those are the calculations that are being made.
Ideally, as you look at the way this system is expected to develop in the next 6 months to a year, what works best in your mind?
Well, in my mind, I think that I look to the health professionals in terms of just, following the public safety guidelines, and, for those people who want a vaccine, to encourage them to get a vaccine. But really, a part of me worries about, different strains of the virus developing. And right now it looks like vaccinations are effective against the different strains that are emerging in different parts of the world. But there's always a lag between the data that's available and when it's reported. And so we know about a few different strains. There will likely be more, almost certainly will be more. And so how will that impact a vaccination and then a vaccine passport? And I think, again, it's just unclear.
As somebody who works in intelligence, I'm sure you've heard all kinds of conspiracy theories, and people in your line of work, you got to track them down and find out if there's any veracity to them. Some of those issues, that must be fascinating behind the scenes to work on that stuff.
Yeah, usually what happens with conspiracy theories when it comes to vaccines specifically, and this has been around long before COVID, is that major, sort of public figures or wealthy people will be targeted for conspiracy theories. And we have certainly tracked that kind of online activity, both on the surface web and the deep and dark web. And there are always sort of misinformation and disinformation campaigns that are, have a lot of life and a lot of followers and subscribers. But we try to just, gather information and report it to clients and other intelligence teams and partners, and just try to get to the truth and make sure that that's what we're reporting.
The way that COVID-19 has basically changed the entire world, do you see governments that are behind the scenes working one direction or another to try to make changes that would bring down countries or sectors of infrastructure within a country?
Yeah, that's the first time someone's asked me about that this morning, and my background is actually in studying authoritarian regimes, and I'm concerned that COVID is yet another excuse for dictators, autocratic regimes, anti-democratic governments to repress their citizens, exploit the sort of legitimate health crisis as a means to consolidate power. And there are studies and articles by sort of major thinkers in the U.S. and internationally who are identifying this as sort of a second wave problem of, even if we get the majority of people vaccinated globally, which is a huge ask by itself, then we have what governments will do, to sort of take advantage of the public health crisis. And unfortunately, there are a lot of pitfalls that are associated with that topic as well.
So with your line of work, probably you can see that this is really the beginning stages of what might be an ongoing arena of battle between countries. Yeah,
I think that I hesitate to say that everything is a crisis, but I think it's fair to say, and it's certainly not a political statement, that the world is facing a number of major crises simultaneously. And just on the public health front, assuming good intent by the majority of the world's governments to kind of protect their populations, get people vaccinated, encourage public safety measures in public spaces, even if everything goes right, you will still have major power competition among powerful countries, and then you will have governments that are not as visible trying to secure their own interest. And so those things are, context specific and very difficult to sort of see until after the fact. There's always a lag in information.
Hey, Jonathan, you were supposed to make me feel better. I'm not sure I do. But thanks for joining us this morning. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
It is Indiana in the Morning on WCCS. Right up to news time. Right up to news time.